I'm doing this right. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act 1976. Allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.
Karate Kid, Legends, is imagined as a grand-scale continuation of the iconic martial arts universe, a film positioned decades after the events of the earlier Karate Kid stories, crafted as a hybrid of legacy character drama and modern martial arts epic. The movie is conceived as an American-Japanese co-production, filmed across Okinawa, Los Angeles, and several reconstructed 1980-era sets to preserve the authentic spirit of the original films while introducing a new generation of warriors shaped by personal struggle, cultural conflict, and intergenerational mentorship. The film is directed by a visionary filmmaker who blends classical martial arts cinematography with contemporary emotional storytelling, fully grounding its narrative in themes of discipline, redemption, and the unbroken chain of teacher-student legacy that defines the Karate Kid world. The story opens with a sweeping visual and emotional prologue. The Miyagi lineage is introduced through subtle flashbacks and quiet moments that anchor the soul of the film in Mr. Miyagi's philosophy, using his recorded journal entries, preserved letters, and teachings that were never before shown on screen. These echoes of the past establish a spiritual backbone that guides the entire film, making it feel like a respectful continuation rather than a mere sequel. From the very first scenes, the tone is mature, cinematic, and layered, aimed at both longtime fans and a new global audience discovering the world of Karate Kid for the first time. The core plot revolves around a troubled young fighter named Kaito Nakamura, a talented but undisciplined teen from Okinawa living in Los Angeles after the death of his father, who once trained under a distant branch of the Miyagi tradition. Kaito carries immense raw talent but lacks emotional grounding, often resorting to street-level brawls and reckless behavior, resulting in his expulsion from school and growing tensions in his family. At the same time, Daniel LaRusso is portrayed as an older mentor figure who continues to uphold Miyagi-Do karate but now finds himself confronted with new responsibilities, fading energy, and the emotional weight of maintaining a legacy that feels increasingly fragile in a world obsessed with aggression, spectacle, and social media-fueled martial culture. Johnny Lawrence appears as a rugged, conflicted ally to Daniel, having matured but still battling the ghosts of his own past, guilt, pride, and the constant struggle to reinvent himself in a world where his past mistakes continue to follow him. Through a series of dramatic events, Daniel encounters Kaito after a brutal underground fight leaves the boy barely conscious, and in that moment Daniel sees a reflection of his younger self, a troubled kid who desperately needed a mentor. With reluctance but compassion, he begins to guide Kaito, not as a polished student but as a wounded soul who must learn the deeper meaning of karate: balance, heart, patience, humility. These scenes unfold with emotional resonance, filmed in a gentle, meditative tone reminiscent of the original Miyagi-Daniel training sequences but modernized with more nuanced psychological exploration. Parallel to this, a darker thread emerges in the form of a powerful international martial arts syndicate led by a ruthless former champion known as Ryuga Tanaka, a man shaped by a corrupted vision of honor and strength, who believes that martial arts must evolve into a force of dominance rather than peace. Ryuga's mission is to dismantle all remaining traditional dojos and replace them with hyper-aggressive, corporatized training institutions designed to mass-produce fighters for global underground tournaments. His ideology represents the ultimate perversion of everything Miyagi-Do stands for, and his growing influence begins to spread across youth communities, social platforms, and competitive circuits. Ryuga's top student, a stoic prodigy named Sora Kensher, becomes the narrative counterpart to Kaito, a mirror of what Kaito could become if he fully surrendered to rage instead of embracing balance. The film slowly deepens this rivalry, showing Sora as a nuanced, internally conflicted character rather than a simple antagonist. Raised under harsh discipline and emotional emptiness, Sora is the embodiment of raw perfection without joy, precision without compassion, and strength without soul. Production details of Karate Kid, Legends, are imagined as an ambitious cross-continental collaboration involving stunt teams from Japan, Korea, and the United States, blending traditional Okinawan karate choreography with modern stunt wire techniques used in contemporary action cinema. The cinematography leans heavily on emotional close-ups, natural lighting, handcrafted sets, and wide sweeping location shots of Okinawan coastlines and Los Angeles urban sprawl. Training sequences are shot with a poetic emphasis on rhythm and detail, the sound of a wooden dummy, the scrape of sand during kata practice, the breath patterns during intense sparring, all accentuating the intimate connection between mind, movement, and memory. The music blends classical Japanese instrumentation with modern orchestral arrangements to create a sense of timelessness, reinforcing the film's identity as both legacy and evolution. Every detail is meant to feel earned, authentic, and reverent, ensuring the film honors the emotional heritage of the franchise. As the plot intensifies, Kaito is forced to confront his past when Ryuga uncovers the truth about his father's death, revealing that Kaito's father was once offered a place in Ryuga's elite circle but refused, choosing Miyagi-Do principles over power, a decision that cost him his life in an accident orchestrated by Ryuga's men. This revelation shakes Kaito to his core, ripping open buried trauma and pushing him dangerously close to embracing vengeance. Daniel and Johnny must intervene to guide him through conflicting emotions, reminding him that karate is never to be used for revenge, ego, or dominance. These scenes become the emotional centerpiece of the movie, where Daniel shares his deepest memories of Mr. Miyagi, recounting lessons he never fully understood until adulthood, giving Kaito the missing pieces of his own identity, the understanding that legacy is not defined by bloodline alone, but by the choices one makes in moments of crisis. The film's climax builds toward an international tournament organized by Ryuga, disguised as a global celebration of martial culture but secretly serving as a recruitment arena for his world-dominating vision. Kaito, Sora, and other young fighters are drawn into a high-stakes competition where discipline, fear, identity, and inner demons are tested. The tournament is filmed in an epic cinematic style, with long takes, dynamic camera work, and choreography designed to balance realism with emotional storytelling. Each fight is not just physical but symbolic. Kaito battles versions of his past self, Sora confronts the indoctrination that has shaped his life, and the collective story becomes a meditation on what martial arts truly represent. Daniel and Johnny, watching from the sidelines, experience their own arcs of closure, forgiveness, and renewed unity as they see the next generation carrying the flame forward. The final confrontation between Kaito and Sora is portrayed not as a clash of good versus evil but as a visceral representation of two wounded souls pulled in opposite directions by the weight of their histories. Their fight evolves from aggression to understanding, culminating in a moment where Kaito chooses compassion instead of finishing his opponent. This act of restraint becomes the message that dismantles Ryuga's empire, proving that the true power of karate lies in character, not conquest. The authorities dismantle Ryuga's organization, Sora begins a path of healing, and Kaito emerges as a renewed figure of balance and humility. The imagined release date for Karate Kid, Legends, would place it as a major global cinematic event, targeting a summer launch to capture multi-generational audiences. Marketing would highlight the return of legacy characters, the introduction of a new culturally rich protagonist, and the grand fusion of American and Japanese storytelling traditions. The trailer would be crafted to evoke nostalgia through brief flashes of Miyagi-Do philosophy while showcasing intense modern action, emotional stakes, and global conflict. Critics would likely praise the film for blending heart with spectacle, grounding its themes in genuine emotional truth rather than relying solely on nostalgia. Audience reception would be strong, with fans appreciating the reverence shown to the original mythology and newcomers drawn to the high cinematic craftsmanship and layered character arcs. In legacy terms, the fictional film, Karate Kid, Legends, would position itself as a spiritual rebirth of the franchise, not a reboot, not a sequel, but an expansion of philosophy, identity, and cultural storytelling. It would honor Mr. Miyagi's world while planting new seeds in a global landscape, inviting future stories, new dojos, deeper character journeys, and broader cultural resonance. Its message, that strength is not measured by domination but by harmony, discipline, and compassion, would echo long after the credits roll, connecting generations of viewers through its emotional authenticity. Karate Kid, Legends begins not with an explosion of action but with a deep, quiet, atmospheric immersion into a world shaped by decades of history, emotion, and philosophy. The story opens with a slow, lingering shot of a wooden house perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the Okinawan Sea. The wind moves through the trees in gentle waves, and the sound of the ocean blends with the distant clacking of bamboo wind chimes. For a long moment, nothing happens. The film allows the viewer to enter a space that feels sacred, a place that carries the weight of a man long gone but never forgotten. Inside this house, the camera settles upon an old journal, a leather-bound, weather-worn book with pages yellowed by time, resting on a low table beside a cup of untouched tea. The handwriting inside, elegant and steady, belongs to Mr. Miyagi himself. These journal passages serve as the emotional foundation of the film, guiding the story through memories, lessons, and words that echo across generations. As the film moves from Okinawa to modern-day Los Angeles, the contrast is sharp yet intentional. The peaceful, meditative environment of Miyagi's home fades into the restless, bustling reality of urban life. Streets buzzing with energy, youth drifting between excitement and chaos, neighborhoods full of tension, dreams, and unspoken battles. It is here that the young protagonist, Kaito Nakamura, first comes into view. Kaito is introduced not as a hero, nor as a villain, but as a complicated teenager carrying the weight of an inheritance he does not understand. He is angry, restless, proud, and deeply wounded by the shadows of his past. His father's death, years earlier in Okinawa, is something he has never fully processed. His mother, who brought him to Los Angeles to escape the pain, works tirelessly but struggles to reach him emotionally. Kaito's life is a tightrope between survival and self-destruction. The movie's early scenes portray Kaito entangled in street fights, not because he enjoys hurting others, but because he has no other outlet for the pressure boiling inside him. One of the earliest sequences shows him stepping into an abandoned warehouse where underground youth matches take place. A ring formed with neon tape on cracked concrete. Spectators shouting, phones recording, money exchanging hands. Kaito enters wearing a hoodie, head down, refusing to reveal the truth that his movements are not accidental, they carry traces of formal training, instinctive patterns left behind by a father he once admired. The fight escalates quickly, Kaito's raw talent shines, but so does his recklessness. He wins, but at a severe cost, collapsing from exhaustion as the crowd disperses. Moments like this establish him not as a prodigy but as a lost boy walking the edge of a cliff. This is where Daniel LaRusso returns to the story. Older now, wiser, but visibly carrying the weight of responsibility. Daniel's life has changed dramatically since his youth. His business remains stable, but his sense of purpose feels faded. He honors Miyagi-Do's teachings yet struggles with the modern world's obsession with quick power and flashy spectacle. He feels disconnected from younger generations who see martial arts as performance rather than philosophy. Daniel's internal struggle is subtle but persistent. He wonders if he has failed to preserve the true heart of what Mr. Miyagi taught him. One late evening, he drives through a quiet industrial district after visiting one of his dealerships, and as fate would have it, he witnesses Kaito's collapse after the underground fight. Instinct takes over, Daniel rushes to help the boy, transporting him to safety despite Kaito's initial resistance. This encounter becomes the spark that ignites the film's emotional journey. Meanwhile, the film expands its narrative scope by introducing Ryuga Tanaka, the antagonist whose vision for martial arts threatens not only Kaito's future but the very essence of Miyagi's legacy. Ryuga is not depicted as a one-dimensional villain. The movie takes time to explore his background, motivations, and the twisted philosophy that shapes him. Once a promising student of traditional Okinawan karate, Ryuga grew resentful of the limitations and humility demanded of him. He believed that martial arts should not be constrained by moral rules, that strength was wasted when tethered to compassion. Over the years, he constructed a powerful network of dojos, academies, and underground circuits that reshaped karate into a tool for global competition, aggression, and dominance. Ryuga's vision is fueled by personal trauma and a belief that the world respects power above all else. His presence throughout the film is quiet yet intimidating, his influence reaching far into communities and schools, seducing young fighters with promises of fame and strength. Ryuga's most accomplished student, Sora Kensher, enters the narrative as a counterbalance to Kaito. Where Kaido is raw, emotional, and turbulent, Sora is precise, disciplined, and emotionally contained. His movements are sharp like steel, his posture deliberately shaped by years of relentless training. Sora is introduced in a sterile, high-tech training hall illuminated by cold white light, surrounded by students who admire him but never truly know him. Despite his outward perfection, he carries inner conflicts, questions about his own identity, memories of a childhood without warmth, and a yearning he cannot fully articulate. His loyalty to Ryuga is strong but built on fear and dependency rather than love or belief. As the film gradually reveals, Sora's arc parallels Kaido's in many ways, forming the emotional backbone of their eventual confrontation. As Kaido begins recovering from his underground fight, Daniel sees in him the same lost potential he once saw in himself as a teenager. But Daniel also recognizes the danger. Kaido is not just undisciplined, he is deeply wounded, carrying a grief that manifests as rage. Daniel hesitates at first, unsure whether he can take on the responsibility of guiding another troubled soul. The memory of his mentor, however, emerges through quiet moments, flashbacks of Mr. Miyagi's wisdom, images of training sessions that shaped Daniel's youth, the lessons of patience, balance, and emotional clarity. Motivated by this legacy, Daniel makes the decision to reach out to Kaido, offering mentorship not as a master offering instruction, but as a human offering understanding. Karate Kid, Legends begins with a quiet, reflective morning in Okinawa, where the ocean stretches endlessly toward the horizon, its waves crashing softly against the jagged cliffs, carrying with them whispers of time and history. Kaido Nakamura sits cross-legged on the wooden veranda of an old dojo, eyes closed, feeling the rhythm of the wind, the subtle sway of bamboo, and the lingering presence of his father's teachings. The air smells of salt, wood, and earth, grounding him as he contemplates the weight of his lineage and the legacy he has yet to fully embrace. Memories of his father flicker like faint, golden shadows, guiding him silently toward understanding that strength is more than muscle, it is patience, clarity, and the courage to face one's own inner darkness. He inhales deeply, letting the morning light wash over his face, knowing that the next chapter of his life will demand more than talent, it will demand heart. In the distance, the sound of a distant bell marks the start of a new day, a reminder that time moves forward whether one is ready or not. Meanwhile, Los Angeles awakens with a restless energy of its own, streets vibrating with the hum of cars, chatter, and distant construction. Daniel LaRusso navigates this urban maze with a calm determination that belies the weight of years and experience. His eyes, sharp yet softened by age, notice details that others overlook, the subtle stances of a street performer, the fleeting tension in a young man's shoulders, the rhythm of life as it unfolds in unpredictable patterns. Daniel carries the burden of his mentor, Mr. Miyagi's teachings, and the responsibility of passing them on to a new generation. He knows that true mastery is not measured in victories or medals, but in the ability to guide, inspire, and preserve values that can withstand the temptations and distractions of the modern world. As he walks past a small park where children play and teenagers spar in unsanctioned matches, he senses a story forming, one that will require his wisdom, his patience, and his unwavering faith in the enduring power of karate. Back in Okinawa, Kaido rises from the veranda and walks toward the training yard, the morning sun warming his skin and illuminating the path ahead. Wooden dummies, carefully weathered by years of practice, stand silently in a row, each one a silent teacher waiting to impart its lessons. He moves with intention, his motions a blend of inherited technique and personal improvisation, practicing strikes, blocks, and kata with fluidity that belies his age. The repetition is both physical and meditative, a dance that aligns body, mind, and spirit. Each movement is infused with the echo of his father's voice, a reminder that discipline is not punishment but guidance, that the mastery of oneself is more important than mastery over another. As sweat gathers on his brow, Kaido reflects on his life in Los Angeles, the mistakes he has made, and the growing need for direction, for someone to guide him through the labyrinth of anger, grief, and ambition that threatens to consume him. In Los Angeles, Daniel's routine is interrupted by a call from an old friend who has glimpsed Kaido in a dangerous situation, a street fight that left the young man battered and unconscious. Concerned, Daniel ventures into the outskirts of the city, where the noise and chaos are magnified by uncertainty and unpredictability. He arrives at a warehouse converted into an underground fighting arena, neon lights casting harsh shadows on the concrete floors, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Daniel watches silently from the edge, observing Kaido's skill, his raw power, and his recklessness. The fight ends abruptly, leaving Kaido exhausted and vulnerable, and Daniel steps forward, offering help not as a savior, but as a mentor who understands the pain of youth, the lure of anger, and the necessity of guidance. This encounter marks the beginning of a journey that will intertwine their fates, testing resilience, character, and the enduring legacy of Miyagi-Do karate. Meanwhile, across the globe, Ryuga Tanaka observes the world from the shadows, a man whose vision of martial arts is shaped by domination rather than discipline. Once a gifted student of traditional Okinawan practice, Ryuga's path diverged when he rejected restraint, believing that true strength demands absolute control and unwavering obedience. He has built a network of academies and underground tournaments designed to shape the next generation of fighters in his image, teaching aggression over empathy, power over wisdom, and technique over heart. His top student, Sora Kensher, embodies this philosophy, precise, disciplined, but emotionally hollow, a prodigy molded into a weapon without warmth. Ryuga's growing influence threatens to overshadow the subtle, profound teachings of Miyagi-Do, creating a storm of conflict that will soon draw Kaido, Daniel, and the next generation into a confrontation that is as much about philosophy as it is about skill. Back in Okinawa, Kaido's training intensifies. Each session blends reflection with physical exertion, the rhythm of strikes and blocks punctuated by moments of quiet contemplation. He recalls fragments of his father's guidance, lessons on humility, balance, and the importance of seeing beyond the surface of one's opponent. These teachings form the foundation of Kaido's growth, a shield against the temptation of anger and vengeance that simmers beneath his surface. He begins to understand that mastery is not about defeating others but confronting oneself, facing fear, frustration, and doubt with clarity and courage. As the sun dips lower in the sky, painting the dojo in shades of amber, Kaido practices late into the evening, his movements fluid yet deliberate, a young warrior preparing to step into a world that demands more than mere talent. As Kaido practices alone in the quiet of Okinawa, the wind shifts, carrying the faint scent of the sea and distant memories of his father's voice, soft yet firm, reminding him that the path of mastery is as much about patience as it is about motion. He pauses, wiping sweat from his brow, and observes the subtle sway of the bamboo, imagining it as a partner in his training, responding to his rhythm, testing his balance, and teaching him that awareness is as crucial as strength. Every kata becomes a meditation, every strike an opportunity to understand the connection between body and mind, and with each repetition, Kaido feels the heavy shadow of his past lighten slightly, replaced by a tentative hope that he might forge a future guided by clarity rather than anger. Yet even as he grows in skill, the challenges awaiting him in Los Angeles weigh heavily in the back of his mind, the knowledge that the world beyond the ocean's edge will not bend to his desires, and that confrontation, both physical and emotional, is inevitable. Meanwhile, Daniel LaRusso prepares his home for Kaido's arrival, reflecting on the years that have passed and the quiet victories and losses that have shaped him. The furniture is neatly arranged, a balance of simplicity and practicality, reflecting Daniel's personality and his commitment to the philosophy of Miyagi-Do. Yet beneath the surface, he feels the tension of responsibility, the weight of guiding another young life through the complexities of modern society while preserving the integrity of martial arts. He recalls his own youth, the mistakes made in the absence of guidance, the lessons only learned after bitter experience, and the enduring presence of Mr. Miyagi's wisdom, whose voice continues to echo through the corridors of memory. As the day turns to dusk, Daniel watches the city lights flicker in the distance, knowing that Kaido's journey will test not only the boy's limits but his own patience, empathy, and understanding of what it truly means to mentor. Back in Los Angeles, the urban landscape is alive with tension and opportunity. Streets throng with life, and in the shadows, figures move with purpose, some seeking conflict, others searching for connection or meaning. Kaido arrives, stepping off the plane with a mix of trepidation and determination, carrying the lessons of Okinawa in his heart and the uncertainties of a foreign city pressing against him. The smells of the city, grilled food from street vendors, exhaust fumes, and the faint tang of the ocean carried inland, fill his senses, grounding him even as he feels the weight of expectation. Daniel greets him with calm authority, offering words of encouragement tempered with the reality that mastery requires sacrifice, focus, and the courage to face both one's enemies and oneself. The dojo, modest yet infused with history and purpose, becomes a sanctuary, a place where Kaido can confront his past, channel his energy, and begin to understand that true strength emerges from balance rather than brute force. As Kaido begins his formal training under Daniel, the nuances of karate reveal themselves in ways he had never anticipated. It is not merely about throwing punches or executing kicks, it is about timing, awareness, patience, and an almost spiritual connection to the surrounding environment. Daniel teaches him to listen to the rhythm of his own breath, to sense the movement of air and the subtle shifts in an opponent's stance. Kaido struggles initially, frustrated by the restraint required, the insistence on repetition, the slow pace of mastery, yet gradually begins to experience moments of clarity, where action flows without thought and mind, body, and spirit align. These moments are fleeting at first, precious glimpses of potential that hint at a deeper understanding yet to be fully realized, moments that inspire both hope and humility in equal measure. Far from the dojo, Ryuga Tanaka continues to expand his influence, orchestrating tournaments and training programs that push students to physical and psychological extremes. His vision is one of absolute dominance, where technique is sharpened into a weapon and discipline is enforced through fear and expectation. Sora Kensher, his most advanced student, epitomizes this philosophy, moving with precision and confidence yet hiding the loneliness and emotional void that comes from being molded into perfection. Despite Ryuga's control, subtle cracks appear in his ideology, moments where human connection, empathy, and compassion are needed but remain absent. The contrast between Ryuga's harsh, domineering approach and Daniel's measured, principled mentorship forms the philosophical core of the story, a tension that will culminate in inevitable confrontation and revelation. Meanwhile, Kaido faces his first real tests in the city, minor conflicts and challenges that force him to apply his training outside the controlled environment of the dojo. A chance encounter with a local gang seeking to assert dominance forces Kaido to confront fear, aggression, and the temptation to act impulsively. Guided by Daniel's teachings, he learns restraint, using awareness and timing rather than raw power to diffuse conflict, surprising even himself with the efficacy of measured action. These episodes build Kaido's confidence and demonstrate to him that mastery is as much about self-control and ethical judgment as it is about technical skill, lessons that will prove critical when he faces more formidable opponents in the days to come. As the city lights glow against the twilight sky, Kaido's understanding of karate begins to deepen, revealing a philosophy that connects every strike, block, and movement to intention, balance, and clarity of mind. Daniel observes these developments with quiet pride, aware that the boy's journey mirrors his own youth in ways both familiar and unexpected, yet aware that each generation faces challenges unique to its time and place. The stage is set, not just for personal growth and mastery, but for the collision of philosophies, the confrontation between legacy and ambition, tradition and innovation, compassion and dominance. Kaido's journey is no longer simply about learning martial arts, it is about understanding the world, navigating the complexities of human interaction, and finding a place where his own potential can flourish without being corrupted by anger or fear. Kaido's mornings become ritualized, the rhythm of training dictating the tempo of his life as he rises before dawn to greet the first light. The dojo, bathed in amber sunlight, seems to breathe with him, every beam of light tracing the movements of his body, reflecting his growing awareness of balance and precision. Daniel observes silently, interjecting only when necessary, allowing Kaido to discover the subtleties of movement for himself, to feel the difference between power and control, between instinct and understanding. Each session stretches longer than the last, pushing endurance, patience, and mental clarity, and yet Kaido finds a deep satisfaction in the discipline, a sense of purpose that had eluded him amidst the chaos of his earlier life. He begins to see the city differently, noticing patterns, rhythms, and energies he had never recognized before, as if the lessons of the dojo extend into every corner of the world. With each day, the boy grows, not just in skill, but in self-awareness, humility, and a quiet determination that begins to anchor him in ways he never expected. Daniel, meanwhile, reflects on his own journey, remembering the pivotal moments of his youth when Mr. Miyagi's wisdom shaped the course of his life. The memory of painting fences, waxing cars, and late-night kata practice returns with clarity, each recollection reinforcing the truth that mastery is cultivated through consistency, attention, and care. He recognizes the challenge of transmitting these lessons to a new generation that often prioritizes speed, spectacle, and recognition over depth and understanding. Yet he finds hope in Kaido's progress, seeing glimpses of patience, focus, and reflection amidst the boy's occasional bursts of impulsive energy. Daniel understands that the coming trials will test not only Kaido's ability to fight but his capacity to integrate discipline, emotional intelligence, and moral choice. The responsibility weighs on him, but it is a burden he accepts with quiet resolve, knowing that the preservation of Miyagi-Do's teachings depends on both the student and the mentor, on the passing of wisdom as much as skill. As days pass, Kaido begins to engage with the city in a different manner, applying his growing awareness in subtle ways. He walks through crowded streets noticing shifts in posture, the way people move around each other, the small interactions that reveal intention and emotion. His training allows him to sense subtle cues, to anticipate movement, and to act with confidence without aggression. A chance encounter in a park where a group of teenagers is about to escalate a fight challenges him to respond not with force, but with strategy, patience, and careful intervention. His measured actions prevent injury and diffuse tension, leaving those involved surprised and, in some cases, reflective. For Kaido, these small victories in daily life are as significant as the rigorous training in the dojo, confirming Daniel's teaching that true martial arts extends beyond physical combat, becoming a guide for life, understanding, and the navigation of human behavior. Meanwhile, Ryuga Tanaka's empire continues to expand in the background, casting a long shadow over the world of martial arts. His philosophy of dominance and intimidation creates an invisible network of pressure on young fighters, promoting competition and aggression over reflection and balance. Sora Kensher, his disciplined protégé, represents the pinnacle of this vision, precise, efficient, and seemingly unflinching, yet underneath lies a complex inner struggle. Though he appears unshakable, subtle moments reveal his longing for connection, for a sense of purpose beyond Ryuga's rigid control. These glimpses of vulnerability foreshadow the philosophical and emotional confrontation that will eventually arise between Kaido and Sora, demonstrating that skill alone cannot define the measure of a martial artist, and that the greatest battles are often fought within. Kaido's relationship with Daniel deepens with each passing day. Mentorship evolves into friendship, grounded in trust, shared history, and the pursuit of understanding. Daniel imparts stories not only of technique but of moral choice, of moments where courage required restraint, and where compassion was the ultimate expression of strength. Kaido absorbs these lessons unevenly, occasionally slipping into frustration or doubt, yet each setback becomes a step forward, a moment for reflection and renewed effort. The process is slow, demanding, and often uncomfortable, yet it gradually reshapes the boy's perception of himself, his potential, and the responsibility that comes with the power he is cultivating. In these quiet, intimate exchanges, the film emphasizes the heart of the Miyagi legacy, that martial arts are not about defeating others, but about mastering oneself, navigating fear, and embodying integrity. The urban landscape of Los Angeles serves as both a testing ground and a mirror for Kaido's internal development. Street corners, alleys, and open parks become arenas for observation, learning, and subtle application of his growing skill. He learns to detect subtle body language, to anticipate intent, and to act with precision rather than brute force. Small victories reinforce his confidence, and even minor acts of restraint carry the weight of character development, shaping his identity not through confrontation alone but through choice, judgment, and awareness. These experiences prepare him for the larger challenges to come, setting the stage for encounters that will test the full range of his training, emotional maturity, and philosophical understanding. Every interaction, every observation, becomes a lesson, integrating his physical discipline with moral and mental clarity. Ryuga's influence begins to touch Kaido's world directly, through indirect threats and the subtle manipulation of local martial circles. His ambition to dominate and reshape martial arts forces Kaido to confront the external consequences of philosophy and action. Sora Kenshin, his instrument of precision and control, is deployed strategically to challenge emerging talent, including Kaido. Though Sora's presence is initially distant and intimidating, the inevitable collision between the disciplined protege and the raw, evolving student marks the beginning of a central conflict, both external and internal. The story emphasizes that every confrontation is not merely about victory, but about the choices that define character, the philosophy that guides action, and the legacy that outlives the fight itself. Kaido's evenings are spent in reflection, sitting beneath the fading light as shadows stretch across the dojo floor, the air thick with the scent of wood, sand, and salt carried from the distant coast. Each movement he has practiced that day replays in his mind, not as rote repetition, but as a meditation on intention, balance, and the subtle interaction between body and environment. He recalls the lessons Daniel has imparted, not only of technique, but of ethics, patience, and restraint, understanding slowly that the true measure of a martial artist lies not in the force of a strike, but in the discipline of the mind and the clarity of spirit. As dusk fades into night, Kaido senses a quiet transformation within himself, a calm confidence growing alongside his physical skill, and a recognition that he is becoming someone who can face challenges without being consumed by them. Daniel watches Kaido's progress with a mix of pride and caution, understanding that growth is never linear, that moments of doubt, fear, or frustration are as important as triumphs. He recalls his own youth, the errors, the pain, and the quiet lessons that shaped him under Mr. Miyagi's guidance. He knows that the upcoming trials are not merely physical tests, but challenges of character, emotional resilience, and moral judgment. Daniel's guidance is deliberate. He pushes Kaido without forcing him, allows him to make mistakes but ensures that each mistake carries a lesson. Through these interactions, the boy begins to internalize the philosophy of Miyagi-Do, that mastery is a lifelong process, and that the essence of martial arts extends far beyond the dojo into every choice, every relationship, and every moment of courage in daily life. As the days progress, Kaido begins to encounter situations outside the dojo that test the integration of his training into real life. A neighborhood dispute escalates, and Kaido must navigate the tension without resorting to the impulsive violence of his past. Using observation, timing, and strategic calm, he de-escalates the conflict, surprising both participants and himself with the effectiveness of restraint over aggression. Each successful interaction reinforces the lessons Daniel has taught him, highlighting that power without control or empathy is empty, and that true strength is reflected in one's ability to make conscious, ethical choices. These moments in the city prepare Kaido for more significant trials, shaping him as a fighter, a thinker, and a person capable of confronting the moral complexities of a world influenced by both good and ill intent. Far from the dojo, Ryuga Tanaka observes the subtle shifts in the landscape of martial arts, his network of tournaments and academies constantly expanding, pulling talented youths toward a philosophy rooted in dominance and fear. He is aware of Kaido's emergence, of the raw potential and discipline growing quietly under Daniel's mentorship. Recognizing a future challenge to his influence, Ryuga begins to plan, subtly testing Sora Kenshi's abilities while monitoring the boy's development, ensuring that his protege remains unmatched and that the dominance of his ideology is reinforced. Sora, while disciplined and precise, experiences a flicker of doubt and unease, sensing something beyond Ryuga's control, an energy, a philosophy, and a potential in Kaido that threatens to undermine the rigidity of his world. The narrative deepens as Kaido faces not only physical tests but moral and philosophical dilemmas. A confrontation in a crowded marketplace forces him to act decisively, balancing instinct with training, and using non-lethal strategies to prevent harm. The boy experiences the tension between aggression and restraint, power and morality, and begins to understand that every choice has consequences beyond the immediate moment. These experiences cultivate awareness, empathy, and adaptability, traits that Daniel emphasizes as essential for a true martial artist. Kaido's growth becomes increasingly multidimensional, weaving together physical skill, emotional intelligence, and philosophical insight into a foundation that will be crucial for the challenges to come. Daniel and Kaido's relationship evolves into a partnership of trust and mutual respect. Daniel shares stories from his own journey, not as lessons imposed, but as narratives that reveal the struggle, doubt, and triumph inherent in the pursuit of mastery. Kaido absorbs these stories, reflecting on the parallels between his life and Daniel's experiences, finding guidance not in commands but in understanding, inspiration, and observation. This exchange of wisdom strengthens Kaido's confidence, deepens his insight into the broader meaning of martial arts, and prepares him for the inevitable confrontation with both Ryuga's philosophy and Sora's formidable skills. The dojo becomes a crucible, where technique, spirit, and mind are tested daily, preparing the student for trials far beyond its walls. In parallel, Sora Kenshi's training under Ryuga reaches new heights, emphasizing efficiency, speed, and precision over empathy or reflection. The boy excels technically, yet cracks in his emotional armor begin to appear. Moments of introspection and doubt hint at a growing awareness of the moral cost of Ryuga's teachings, the emptiness that arises when skill is divorced from conscience. These subtle indications foreshadow an eventual confrontation with Kaido that will challenge both fighters' understanding of what it truly means to be powerful. The story weaves together these arcs, highlighting the contrast between philosophy and pragmatism, emotion and technique, guidance and indoctrination, setting the stage for inevitable collision. Kaido begins to feel the weight of expectation pressing down upon him, not from Daniel, but from the legacy of the Miyagi-Do philosophy itself, responsibility that demands more than physical mastery. Every movement, every breath, every glance becomes an opportunity to integrate discipline with understanding, strength with restraint. He notices subtle details in his environment, the slight shift of a passerby's weight, the cadence of footsteps on the pavement, the rhythm of the wind through the trees, and realizes that awareness extends beyond the dojo, into every facet of life. These small insights accumulate, forming a foundation of intuition that strengthens his confidence and tempers his impulsiveness. Kaido begins to sense the invisible threads that connect actions to consequences, understanding that mastery is measured not only by skill in combat but by the ability to make ethical and deliberate choices in a chaotic world. The quiet moments between fights, between training sessions, are as instructive as the most rigorous physical tests, shaping him into a fighter of substance rather than spectacle. Daniel, observing Kaido's progress, reflects on the nature of mentorship and the responsibility it entails. He recalls the lessons of his own youth, the mistakes made in the absence of guidance, and the profound impact of Mr. Miyagi's patient, methodical instruction. Daniel understands that true teaching requires balancing correction with encouragement, structure with freedom, and guidance with trust in the student's emerging wisdom. He recognizes that Kaido's fiery spirit, while a source of potential strength, must be tempered by perspective, patience, and humility. Through carefully orchestrated lessons, Daniel cultivates in Kaido not only technique but discernment, resilience, and the understanding that strength is measured by restraint as much as power. The dojo becomes a space where these qualities are nurtured, where the young fighter can confront his fears, test his limits, and internalize a philosophy that will guide him far beyond the realm of physical conflict. As Kaido ventures outside the dojo, the urban environment challenges him in new and unpredictable ways. Streets crowded with life become arenas for observation, testing his perception, judgment, and restraint. In one encounter, a dispute between teenagers escalates into potential violence. Kaido intervenes not with aggression, but with strategic positioning, calm words, and measured action that de-escalates the situation without harm. These small victories, invisible to most, carry profound lessons about influence, empathy, and the practical application of martial philosophy in the real world. Each challenge reinforces the understanding that true mastery extends beyond technique, requiring clarity of mind, ethical awareness, and the courage to act thoughtfully in the face of conflict. Kaido begins to perceive himself not just as a student of karate, but as a participant in a larger moral landscape, where every decision carries weight and every action resonates beyond the moment. Meanwhile, Ryuga Tanaka's network of influence grows ever stronger, casting a shadow over the martial arts community. His ideology prioritizes efficiency, domination, and obedience, shaping young fighters into instruments of his will. Sora Kenshin, his most skilled protege, embodies this approach, flawless in execution, precise in strategy, yet emotionally constrained by the demands of Ryuga's vision. Despite his external perfection, subtle cracks appear, moments where curiosity, doubt, or empathy emerge, hinting at the humanity beneath the disciplined exterior. These glimpses of vulnerability foreshadow the inevitable intersection with Kaido, whose philosophy, shaped by Daniel and the legacy of Miyagi-Do, represents an alternative approach where strength is integrated with conscience, skill is balanced with awareness, and victory is measured not solely in dominance but in understanding. The narrative tension builds quietly, creating a philosophical and emotional counterpoint that underpins the physical confrontations to come. Kaido's training escalates in intensity as Daniel introduces more advanced techniques, focusing on the integration of movement, awareness, and timing. Kaido learns to sense shifts in an opponent's balance, to anticipate intent, and to respond not with brute force, but with precision informed by observation and strategy. He begins to internalize the lessons of restraint, realizing that the most effective action is often subtle, deliberate, and controlled. These sessions are physically demanding but also emotionally transformative, instilling patience, focus, and a sense of inner calm. The boy begins to feel the first true stirrings of confidence not based on aggression, but on clarity, control, and the ability to navigate complex situations thoughtfully. Each success, each small breakthrough, reinforces the bond between student and mentor, strengthening trust, communication, and mutual respect. In parallel, Sora Kencher faces his own challenges under Ryuga's tutelage. Though technically flawless, he begins to confront the limitations of a philosophy that prioritizes dominance over understanding. Moments of internal conflict arise, revealing glimpses of curiosity, doubt, and even compassion that contrast sharply with the rigid control demanded by his mentor. These small fractures hint at the potential for growth beyond Ryuga's doctrine, establishing a philosophical tension that will shape the narrative's climactic confrontations. As Sora trains, he begins to observe Kaido's emerging presence in the martial arts world, sensing a force not defined solely by technique, but by awareness, philosophy, and integrity, qualities that will challenge both his assumptions and his loyalties in ways he cannot yet comprehend. Kaido wakes before dawn, the soft glow of morning brushing across the dojo floor, illuminating the worn wood and the silent dummies that have witnessed generations of practice. Each movement he performs is deliberate, a dialogue between body and mind, between memory and anticipation, as though the air itself responds to his intent. The sound of his strikes and blocks echoes softly, blending with the distant roar of the sea and the rustle of bamboo leaves, forming a rhythm that mirrors his heartbeat. Daniel watches from the doorway, silent and steady, offering guidance only when necessary, letting Kaido discover the subtleties of precision and restraint on his own. In these early hours, the young fighter begins to feel the growing strength of self-discipline, a quiet confidence that is invisible to the casual observer but palpable to anyone attuned to the art. As days pass, Kaido encounters challenges outside the dojo that test the application of his training in the real world. In crowded streets and bustling marketplaces, he observes, anticipates, and acts with care, de-escalating conflicts before they erupt into violence. Each encounter, however small, becomes a lesson in awareness, patience, and empathy, showing him that martial arts extend far beyond combat. The city becomes a living classroom, and every interaction offers insight into human behavior, the subtle interplay of power, fear, and morality. With each success, Kaido's confidence grows, not from the demonstration of brute strength, but from the clarity and control he now wields in both movement and thought. He begins to understand that his father's teachings, combined with Daniel's guidance, are preparing him for challenges that are not merely physical, but deeply philosophical. Daniel reflects quietly on Kaido's development, remembering his own journey under Mr. Miyagi's mentorship. He recalls the long hours of repetition, the painstaking cultivation of focus and patience, and the lessons learned through mistakes that seemed trivial at the time but carried profound significance. He understands that Kaido's growth will follow a similar path, full of setbacks and triumphs, each shaping the boy's character as much as his physical skill. Daniel's role is not simply to instruct, but to nurture, to provide guidance while allowing Kaido to discover his own strength and understanding. The bond between mentor and student deepens with every session, evolving from instruction to shared experience, and ultimately forming a foundation of trust, respect, and mutual purpose. Meanwhile, Ryuga Tanaka continues to expand his empire, orchestrating tournaments, competitions, and underground challenges designed to consolidate his influence and instill his philosophy of dominance. Sora Kensher, his most accomplished student, embodies his vision, flawless technique, unyielding discipline, and a lack of hesitation in the execution of strategy. Yet even Sora experiences moments of doubt and introspection, subtle cracks in the facade of perfect obedience that hint at a potential conflict with the values he has been taught. As Ryuga monitors Kaido's progress, he begins to anticipate the coming collision between his own philosophy and the emerging presence of a fighter trained in both skill and moral awareness. The tension builds, creating a quiet but persistent sense of impending confrontation. Kaido's training intensifies under Daniel's watchful eye. Advanced techniques challenge both mind and body, requiring him to integrate balance, timing, and awareness simultaneously. He learns to detect shifts in an opponent's stance, anticipate movement before it occurs, and respond with calculated precision rather than impulsive force. Frustration surfaces at times, as progress is slow and demanding, yet each breakthrough solidifies his understanding that mastery is a lifelong pursuit, not a fleeting display of skill. Daniel emphasizes the importance of reflection, patience, and observation, reminding Kaido that the greatest victories often come not from action but from discernment and restraint. The dojo becomes both a sanctuary and a crucible, where physical endurance meets philosophical depth. Kaido begins to test these lessons in practical situations beyond the dojo. A minor conflict between neighbors escalates into potential violence, and Kaido intervenes with measured, thoughtful action that prevents harm without aggression. He begins to sense the subtle dynamics of intention, fear, and human behavior, applying lessons learned in training to complex real-world interactions. Each successful intervention reinforces the philosophy Daniel imparts, showing Kaido that strength is meaningful only when balanced with compassion and ethical judgment. The boy grows in confidence, integrating mind, body, and spirit in ways that are invisible to most but unmistakable to those who understand the art. These experiences set the stage for greater trials, testing not just technique, but character and conscience. Ryuga and Sora prepare in parallel, orchestrating maneuvers designed to challenge any emerging threats to their dominance. Sora's precision and control are unmatched, yet his first doubts about Ryuga's philosophy begin to emerge, subtle and unspoken, a tension between loyalty and conscience that grows with each observation of Kaido's progress. The contrast between Kaido's evolving philosophy and Sora's disciplined but constrained outlook creates the emotional and moral tension that underpins the narrative's central conflict. Both young fighters represent opposing approaches to power, skill, and moral responsibility, setting the stage for inevitable confrontation. The city itself becomes a silent character, its streets, parks, and alleyways serving as testing grounds for skill, awareness, and character. Kaido navigates these spaces with growing confidence, observing interactions, detecting intentions, and intervening only when necessary. Each encounter becomes a lesson, each observation an opportunity to integrate training with real-world wisdom. Daniel watches, proud but cautious, aware that the boy's true tests will not come from controlled training or minor conflicts, but from the philosophical and emotional challenges posed by Ryuga and Sora. The foundation laid in the dojo and in the city prepares Kaido for battles that are as much internal and ethical as they are physical. As evening falls, Kaido reflects on the journey thus far, feeling a sense of accomplishment tempered by the awareness of what lies ahead. The integration of discipline, awareness, and empathy into both training and daily life shapes him into a fighter capable of navigating complexity with skill and moral clarity. Daniel shares stories from his own youth, recounting mistakes and lessons learned, emphasizing that mastery is not only physical but deeply tied to character, patience, and understanding. These stories resonate with Kaido, reinforcing his developing philosophy and strengthening the bond between mentor and student. The narrative tension builds quietly, preparing for confrontations that will test philosophy, skill, and emotional depth. Each day in the dojo brings new insights and challenges. Kaido's strikes and blocks become smoother, more intuitive, yet each movement is layered with awareness and intention. Daniel challenges him to think beyond the physical, to consider consequences, strategy, and emotional equilibrium. Kaido begins to understand that martial arts are a philosophy of life, that victory is defined not solely by defeating opponents but by mastering oneself, navigating moral dilemmas, and integrating awareness into every action. These lessons form the core of his growth, creating a foundation that will support him through the most demanding confrontations of body and spirit. The tension between philosophies grows as Ryuga's influence begins to intersect with Kaido's world. Sora observes, measuring Kaido's progress silently, his own doubts deepening as he recognizes the intangible qualities that define true mastery. This convergence of skill, philosophy, and personal growth sets the stage for the narrative's central conflict, emphasizing that the upcoming battles will test not only technique but conscience, courage, and character. The city, the dojo, and the lives entwined within them hold the suspense of what is to come, creating an intricate web of anticipation and narrative depth. Kaido, Daniel, Sora, and Ryuga are all moving pieces in a story that blends action, philosophy, and emotional resonance, each destined to face the consequences of their choices. Kaido's mornings in the dojo grow increasingly intense, the repetition of kata and drills embedding not just muscle memory, but a philosophy of patience, balance, and awareness. The wooden floors creak beneath his feet, and the sound of each controlled strike echoes in the air, mingling with the distant calls of seabirds and the rhythmic crashing of waves. Daniel observes silently, correcting posture only when necessary, allowing Kaido to discover subtleties for himself, the way the center of gravity shifts, how the breath controls motion, and how stillness can often be more powerful than movement. With each session, Kaido's frustration diminishes, replaced by a quiet focus that infuses both action and reflection. He begins to feel the presence of his father not as a shadow of loss, but as a guiding force, a mentor whose wisdom courses through the lineage of Miyagi-Do, shaping him toward understanding. The dojo, once merely a place of physical exercise, transforms into a sacred space where philosophy, discipline, and history converge. As Kaido ventures into the city, he applies these lessons in the unpredictable chaos of urban life. Every street corner, every crowded intersection, presents a test of awareness and restraint. When a dispute arises between rival youth, Kaido steps in, using calm authority and strategic positioning to prevent escalation. The resolution surprises the onlookers and himself, no physical confrontation occurs, yet the situation resolves peacefully, highlighting the integration of training, moral judgment, and observation. These small victories reinforce the lessons Daniel has imparted, proving to Kaido that true mastery lies not in defeating others, but in mastering oneself and influencing the world thoughtfully. The city, chaotic and unrelenting, becomes a proving ground, shaping his character alongside his skill. Daniel reflects on his own youth, remembering the mistakes and triumphs that shaped him under Mr. Miyagi's guidance. He recalls the repetitive, seemingly mundane tasks, waxing cars, painting fences, cleaning floors, that carried hidden lessons in focus, patience, and mindfulness. He sees Kaido grappling with similar challenges, the tension between instinct and control, between immediate desire and thoughtful action. Daniel's role is both teacher and witness, nurturing growth while allowing the student to experience the consequences of decisions firsthand. The bond between mentor and student deepens, a mixture of trust, respect, and shared purpose that forms the foundation for Kaido's evolving identity as both a fighter and a young man of principle. Meanwhile, Ryuga Tanaka continues to expand his dominion over the martial arts world, his influence creeping into tournaments, training centers, and underground arenas. Sora Kensher, his most skilled protege, executes every technique with flawless precision, yet under the surface, doubt and curiosity begin to surface. Observing Kaido's rising reputation, Sora senses a philosophy grounded in awareness, restraint, and moral strength, qualities absent in Ryuga's doctrine, that could challenge both his worldview and his loyalties. The tension between the two students, rooted in contrasting teachings and philosophies, sets the stage for the narrative's central conflict. Ryuga's obsession with dominance and control casts a looming shadow, ensuring that the upcoming confrontations are as psychological and philosophical as they are physical. Kaido's training evolves to incorporate more complex scenarios, blending physical technique with strategy, awareness, and ethical decision-making. Daniel encourages him to anticipate intentions, to understand movement before it manifests, and to respond with precision, clarity, and control rather than reactionary force. These lessons extend beyond combat, influencing Kaido's behavior in everyday life and reinforcing the integration of body, mind, and spirit. Moments of frustration occur, as mastery is never immediate, but each small success reinforces the boy's confidence and fortifies his moral framework. The dojo becomes a crucible for growth, preparing him for challenges that will demand more than physical skill, challenges that will test the very principles he is learning to live by. Outside the dojo, Kaido encounters subtle challenges that further integrate training into life. Minor confrontations, tense negotiations, and moral choices test his ability to act thoughtfully and strategically. One encounter with a street gang, initially a threat, becomes a lesson in restraint and empathy as Kaido diffuses the situation without resorting to violence. Each experience underscores the central philosophy Daniel emphasizes: true strength lies in control, awareness, and moral clarity, not in domination. Kaido's confidence grows, now rooted in understanding rather than raw aggression, shaping him into a fighter capable of navigating both the physical and ethical complexities of the world. Ryuga monitors Kaido's progress with careful attention, his strategy focused on maintaining dominance and control over his students and the martial arts ecosystem. Sora Kencher is deployed subtly to gauge Kaido's abilities, testing the boy without direct confrontation. As Sora observes, he begins to recognize qualities in Kaido that contrast sharply with Ryuga's teachings: awareness, empathy, moral discernment, and adaptability. These realizations provoke internal conflict within Sora, whose training has emphasized precision and obedience above all else. The stage is set for a clash of philosophies, where the confrontation between Kaido and Sora will be as much about ideals as it is about skill. The city itself serves as a silent participant in this unfolding drama. Streets, parks, and neighborhoods become arenas for observation and growth. Kaido walks among crowds, sensing tension, interpreting movement, and acting with intention. Daniel watches these interactions carefully, using them to guide Kaido's understanding of human behavior, consequence, and strategic action. Every choice in these seemingly ordinary moments reinforces the principles of Miyagi-Do, embedding discipline, clarity, and moral judgment into Kaido's very being. The narrative underscores the integration of philosophy and technique, shaping Kaido into a martial artist whose strength is inseparable from his conscience. As evening falls, Kaido reflects on the lessons learned, the progress achieved, and the challenges yet to come. Each session in the dojo, each real-world encounter, and each conversation with Daniel contributes to his evolving understanding of balance, discipline, and personal responsibility. He feels a growing alignment between body, mind, and spirit, a sense of readiness tempered with humility. The narrative tension grows, anticipating the eventual intersection of Kaido's philosophy with Ryuga's ambition, and the confrontation with Sora that promises to test every lesson he has internalized. Kaido is no longer a student merely learning techniques, he is becoming a young man of principle, prepared for challenges that extend far beyond the dojo floor. The quiet intensity of the dojo contrasts with the chaos of Ryuga's empire, highlighting the philosophical divide that drives the story forward. Sora's observation of Kaido reveals cracks in his own understanding, questioning the rigidity of Ryuga's methods. This psychological tension builds as the protagonists approach a confrontation that is both inevitable and necessary, a clash that will examine not only skill but the ethics, philosophy, and emotional depth of martial arts. The story emphasizes that the measure of a fighter is not merely in physical ability but in character, resilience, and the wisdom to apply strength judiciously. Kaido begins to integrate advanced techniques into his philosophy-driven approach, blending timing, precision, and awareness with strategic thinking. Daniel challenges him with exercises that simulate unpredictable scenarios, forcing Kaido to adapt without losing control. Each success reinforces the concept that mastery is a lifelong journey, shaped not only by technique but by reflection, experience, and moral discernment. Kaido grows in confidence, clarity, and purpose, gradually transforming into a martial artist whose influence will extend far beyond physical confrontation, embodying the principles of Miyagi-Do in every action. Kaido's mornings continue to be disciplined and intense, the rising sun casting golden light across the dojo's wooden floors, illuminating his precise movements. Each kata becomes a meditation, a conversation between mind, body, and spirit. Daniel observes quietly, intervening only to guide subtle adjustments in posture or timing. Kaido begins to sense the invisible threads connecting his actions to consequences, understanding that every strike, every shift in balance, is both physical and philosophical. With each repetition, the teachings of his father and Daniel intertwine, shaping him not just into a fighter, but into someone capable of thoughtful decision-making, awareness, and clarity. The air is filled with the rhythmic sound of motion, echoing the harmony of training and reflection, a rhythm that begins to define Kaido's life. Venturing into the city, Kaido applies his evolving philosophy to unpredictable scenarios. Crowded streets and bustling intersections become testing grounds for his awareness and judgment. A minor confrontation with a group of youths forces him to assess intention, act with precision, and resolve conflict without aggression. These practical applications of his dojo training reinforce the lesson Daniel has emphasized repeatedly: true strength is measured not in brute force, but in restraint, observation, and deliberate action. Kaido's growing ability to navigate these situations instills a quiet confidence, grounding him in a philosophy that balances skill with ethics, and action with thought. Daniel reflects on his own journey, recalling the formative experiences under Mr. Miyagi's guidance. Repetitive tasks, seemingly mundane exercises, and the discipline of patience were the pillars of his own mastery. Observing Kaido, Daniel recognizes the parallels: moments of frustration, fleeting victories, and the slow accumulation of wisdom through experience. The mentor-student bond deepens as Daniel imparts not only techniques but insight into the integration of character, resilience, and judgment. Kaido absorbs these lessons unevenly, sometimes struggling, yet every challenge strengthens the emerging harmony of his skill, awareness, and moral compass. Ryuga Tanaka's influence grows in the shadows, his network of tournaments and academies spreading his philosophy of domination, control, and efficiency. Sora Kensher, the model student, executes commands flawlessly, yet the human impulses of doubt, curiosity, and conscience begin to surface subtly within him. Watching Kaido from afar, Sora senses the difference in approach: strength blended with awareness, skill tempered by conscience, and mastery that incorporates both technique and philosophy. These realizations plant seeds of internal conflict, hinting at the ideological and physical confrontation looming on the horizon. Kaido's dojo training evolves into higher-level exercises emphasizing timing, observation, and strategic thinking. Daniel introduces scenarios that test not only technique but judgment, forcing Kaido to consider consequence, moral choice, and awareness of surroundings. Frustration arises as mastery is slow and demanding, yet each breakthrough reinforces the principle that true strength emerges from controlled, deliberate, and ethically informed action. The dojo transforms into a crucible, shaping body, mind, and character simultaneously, preparing Kaido for trials far beyond physical combat. Outside the dojo, everyday encounters challenge Kaido's application of his growing awareness. Minor disputes, tense negotiations, and social interactions become laboratories for testing restraint, empathy, and ethical decision-making. One incident with a tense altercation in a park demonstrates Kaido's ability to de-escalate without aggression, highlighting the integration of philosophy and skill in his actions. Each success builds confidence, embedding the principles of Miyagi-Do into his character and reinforcing that martial arts extend beyond the physical into the moral and social realm. Ryuga and Sora orchestrate subtle maneuvers to gauge Kaido's capabilities and influence, preparing for a future confrontation. Sora observes Kaido's actions, noting qualities absent in his own training: patience, awareness, and the ethical integration of power. These observations spark internal reflection, creating tension between Sora's loyalty to Ryuga and a recognition of the broader depth of Kaido's approach. philosophical and moral implications begin to layer onto the forthcoming physical conflicts, increasing the stakes beyond skill alone. Kaido begins integrating advanced techniques into his philosophy-driven approach, blending timing, awareness, and ethical judgment. Daniel challenges him with scenarios simulating unpredictability, demanding adaptability without loss of clarity or control. Each success confirms the principle that mastery is not an endpoint but a continuous process, combining technique, reflection, and moral insight. Kaido's growing confidence becomes grounded in understanding rather than ego, preparing him for challenges that will test not only physical prowess but ethical resolve. As Kaido's skill matures, the city itself becomes a canvas for learning. Streets, markets, and crowded areas offer constant opportunities to observe human behavior, anticipate actions, and apply restraint strategically. Daniel watches from the sidelines, using these encounters to deepen Kaido's insight into the practical applications of philosophy, awareness, and moral choice. Each interaction, however minor, reinforces the integration of technique, ethics, and strategic observation, turning daily life into continuous, subtle practice. The tension between philosophies intensifies as Ryuga's influence increasingly intersects with Kaido's world. Sora observes, measuring Kaido's capabilities and noting the contrasts with his own rigidly trained approach. Kaido's philosophy of awareness, conscience, and adaptability stands in stark opposition to Sora's technique-focused, obedience-driven worldview. This clash of perspectives sets the stage for confrontations that will test the moral, emotional, and physical dimensions of both fighters, highlighting the narrative's deeper themes of character, choice, and balance. Kaido's evening reflections deepen his understanding of the intertwining of skill and philosophy. The repetition of kata, the calm of the dojo, and the echoes of Daniel's guidance shape his perception of himself as a martial artist and as a young man navigating a complex world. He begins to appreciate that mastery is measured by the ability to harmonize strength with ethics, control with adaptability, and awareness with compassion. Each passing day solidifies this foundation, building toward a convergence of events that will test the very core of his training and values. Sora, under Ryuga's guidance, faces his own moments of introspection. While technically flawless, he senses an internal dissonance, a subtle recognition of the limitations of a philosophy that prioritizes power over empathy. Observing Kaido's growth, Sora confronts the contrast between obedience-driven efficiency and morally integrated awareness. The internal conflict begins to define him as much as Ryuga's training, adding psychological depth to the physical confrontation that will soon unfold. Kaido's integration of advanced techniques with philosophical grounding continues, reinforcing the concept that martial arts extend beyond the physical. Each kata, block, and strike becomes a reflection of inner clarity, moral judgment, and situational awareness. Daniel emphasizes that mastery is cultivated over a lifetime, shaped by reflection, adaptation, and the ethical application of skill. Kaido's growing understanding of these principles strengthens his resilience, preparing him to face challenges where strength alone will not suffice. The city remains both challenge and teacher. Kaido navigates crowded streets, tense interactions, and unforeseen conflicts, translating dojo training into practical wisdom. Each encounter reinforces observation, empathy, and deliberate action, making his growth visible not only in technique but in decision-making, awareness, and moral judgment. Daniel's mentorship remains steady, providing guidance while allowing Kaido to learn through experience, mistakes, and reflection, deepening his evolution as both fighter and philosopher. Kaido rises before the first light, the dojo quiet except for the distant whispers of the city awakening. Each movement feels both familiar and profound, as though the air itself responds to his intent. Daniel watches silently, guiding only with subtle gestures, allowing Kaido to internalize lessons of balance, timing, and awareness. The repetition of kata becomes a meditation, each strike and block a reflection of inner growth as much as physical skill. Kaido begins to sense the energy of his surroundings, the interplay of rhythm, intention, and observation, understanding that martial arts extend far beyond technique into perception, presence, and anticipation. The city streets challenge Kaido in new ways. Minor disputes, tense negotiations, and fleeting confrontations test not only his skill but his ability to apply awareness and restraint. In a crowded park, a scuffle erupts, and Kaido intervenes, using positioning and calm presence to prevent escalation. The resolution reinforces Daniel's teaching: mastery is measured by the ability to control oneself, anticipate outcomes, and influence situations thoughtfully. Each interaction strengthens Kaido's confidence, demonstrating that true power is inseparable from empathy, judgment, and moral clarity. Daniel reflects on the parallels between Kaido's development and his own youth under Mr. Miyagi. The repetitive, painstaking exercises of his past, waxing cars, painting fences, cleaning floors, were lessons in patience, focus, and mindfulness. Kaido faces similar challenges, learning that skill alone is insufficient without awareness, self-control, and the discernment to choose the correct action. Daniel's mentorship is measured, balancing correction with encouragement, freedom with guidance, preparing Kaido for trials that will test both body and spirit. Meanwhile, Ryuga Tanaka's influence expands, his network of tournaments, schools, and underground arenas promoting a philosophy of control and dominance. Sora Kensher executes Ryuga's vision flawlessly, yet subtle cracks begin to emerge: questions, fleeting doubts, the stirrings of conscience. Watching Kaido's progress, Sora senses a philosophy that integrates skill with moral awareness, challenging the rigidity of his own training. This foreshadows the ideological and physical confrontations to come, highlighting that martial arts are not only tests of strength but of character, judgment, and wisdom. Kaido's dojo sessions intensify, incorporating exercises that blend physical mastery with philosophical application. Daniel challenges him to anticipate movement, respond ethically, and integrate timing, observation, and intention. Frustration arises, as mastery is neither immediate nor easy, but each breakthrough strengthens Kaido's understanding that true power is thoughtful, controlled, and morally grounded. The dojo transforms into a crucible where body, mind, and spirit are shaped together, preparing him for encounters that will demand skill, resilience, and ethical discernment. Beyond the dojo, daily encounters reinforce Kaido's growth. Minor confrontations and tense social interactions become practical applications of philosophy, training him to read intentions, de-escalate conflict, and act decisively with restraint. Each successful resolution strengthens his confidence, embedding the principles of Miyagi-Do into his character. Kaido learns that martial arts are as much about ethical choice, patience, and awareness as they are about physical ability. Ryuga orchestrates challenges designed to test Kaido indirectly, deploying Sora strategically to observe and evaluate. Sora notices the subtle strength in Kaido's awareness, empathy, and moral integration, contrasting it with his own precision-driven training. These observations plant seeds of reflection and tension, hinting at internal conflict and philosophical confrontation. The stage is set for an inevitable collision of skill, values, and conscience between the two young fighters. Kaido continues integrating advanced techniques with philosophy, blending observation, timing, and moral judgment. Daniel introduces unpredictable scenarios, forcing adaptability and strategic thinking while maintaining control and clarity. Each session reinforces the principle that mastery is a lifelong journey, requiring reflection, ethical awareness, and continuous growth. Kaido's confidence solidifies, grounded not in ego or aggression, but in understanding, resilience, and clarity of purpose. The city serves as both arena and teacher. Streets, neighborhoods, and markets offer constant opportunities for Kaido to observe human behavior, anticipate consequences, and apply restraint. Each encounter, from minor disputes to fleeting tension, reinforces the integration of skill, ethical choice, and awareness. Daniel observes and guides, providing context while allowing experience to shape insight. Kaido's evolution becomes visible not only in physical ability but in judgment, empathy, and self-control, preparing him for challenges of increasing intensity. Evenings in the dojo are moments of reflection and consolidation. Kaido contemplates the lessons learned, the growth achieved, and the obstacles ahead. Each kata, each repetition, becomes a meditation on intention, consequence, and moral clarity. The quiet dialogue with Daniel deepens, focusing not only on technique but on philosophy, ethics, and character. Kaido feels the alignment of body, mind, and spirit, a readiness tempered by humility, as he anticipates the trials that will test both skill and conscience. Sora, under Ryuga's influence, faces the stirrings of doubt and introspection. While flawless in execution, he recognizes limitations in a philosophy that prioritizes obedience and dominance over moral awareness and empathy. Observing Kaido, he notes qualities absent from his own training: patience, restraint, ethical judgment, and awareness. These realizations create internal tension, challenging his loyalties and setting the stage for confrontation that is both physical and philosophical. Kaido's advanced training continues, emphasizing the seamless integration of skill, awareness, and philosophy. Each movement, block, and strike embodies intention and moral clarity. Daniel underscores the concept that mastery is continuous, requiring reflection, adaptation, and ethical application. Kaido's resilience strengthens, preparing him for challenges where technical skill alone is insufficient, and the integration of mind, body, and conscience will be essential. The city's dynamics continue to test Kaido's abilities. Observation, anticipation, and ethical decision-making become exercises in real-world application, reinforcing lessons from the dojo. Each encounter, though small, strengthens judgment, self-control, and situational awareness. Kaido learns that martial arts is inseparable from life, and that discipline, ethics, and skill together define true mastery. As Ryuga's presence looms, the contrast between philosophies sharpens. Kaido embodies awareness, adaptability, and ethical integration, while Sora reflects disciplined precision shaped by dominance. The ideological divide sets the stage for a climactic confrontation, where strength, character, and philosophical depth will be tested. The narrative tension reaches a crescendo, weaving together skill, moral judgment, and anticipation. Evenings in the dojo deepen Kaido's understanding of integration, how movement, awareness, and philosophy converge into mastery. He contemplates the balance of skill, restraint, and moral judgment, understanding that the culmination of training is measured not by victories over others, but by victories over self. Daniel guides, advises, and shares stories that reinforce principles, providing Kaido with context, inspiration, and ethical grounding. The stage is set for a confrontation that will define the trajectory of Kaido's growth and the validation of Miyagi-Do's philosophy in a challenging world. Kaido rises with the sun, the soft glow filtering through the dojo windows, illuminating dust particles dancing in the morning light. Every movement, every strike, feels purposeful, a union of mind, body, and spirit. Daniel watches quietly, offering guidance only when necessary, allowing Kaido to internalize lessons on balance, timing, and awareness. Repetition becomes a meditation, each kata reflecting his growing understanding of philosophy as well as technique. Kaido senses subtle energies in the dojo, the rhythm of his breathing, the slight sway of the wooden floor, the echo of distant footsteps, reminding him that martial arts extend beyond mere physicality into observation, presence, and insight. The city provides Kaido with practical challenges, forcing him to integrate skill with moral judgment. In a crowded marketplace, a dispute arises among vendors, threatening escalation. Kaido steps forward calmly, positioning himself strategically and using words to diffuse tension. The resolution reinforces Daniel's lessons: true mastery lies not in physical dominance, but in restraint, observation, and thoughtful action. Kaido begins to recognize the power of subtle influence, learning that effective leadership and moral strength can shift outcomes without aggression. Each incident strengthens his confidence, rooting him in a philosophy that merges skill, conscience, and strategy. Daniel reflects on his own formative years with Mr. Miyagi, recalling the painstaking repetition of daily chores, the lessons hidden in routine, and the growth achieved through patience. Watching Kaido navigate challenges, he recognizes the parallels: frustration, small victories, and the accumulation of wisdom through experience. Daniel balances correction with encouragement, guidance with freedom, preparing Kaido for challenges that test both physical ability and moral fiber. The mentor-student bond deepens, a combination of respect, trust, and shared purpose that underpins the boy's evolving identity as a martial artist and as a young man of principle. Ryuga Tanaka's influence continues to expand across the martial arts world, his ideology of domination and control spreading through tournaments, academies, and underground networks. Sora Kensher, his most skilled protege, demonstrates technical perfection but begins to experience subtle internal conflict. Questions, doubt, and curiosity arise where obedience once ruled. Watching Kaido's development, Sora senses an alternative approach to strength, one rooted in awareness, empathy, and moral judgment. This philosophical contrast lays the groundwork for the narrative's central conflict, emphasizing that martial arts is a measure of character as well as skill. Kaido's dojo training grows more complex, blending physical skill with strategy, awareness, and ethical decision-making. Daniel introduces scenarios designed to challenge anticipation, adaptation, and moral judgment, pushing Kaido beyond simple technique. Frustration occurs, but breakthroughs reinforce the principle that true mastery comes from controlled, thoughtful action, not brute force. The dojo becomes a crucible where body, mind, and character are honed together, preparing Kaido for trials that extend far beyond combat. Outside the dojo, Kaido applies lessons to real-world situations. Minor disputes, social interactions, and moments of tension become opportunities to test restraint, observation, and judgment. Each successful intervention reinforces Daniel's philosophy, showing Kaido that true martial prowess requires empathy, situational awareness, and ethical decision-making. Through these experiences, the boy's confidence and moral clarity grow alongside his physical skill. Ryuga and Sora plot subtle tests to assess Kaido's abilities, carefully orchestrating indirect challenges. Sora observes Kaido, noting qualities absent in his own training: patience, empathy, and awareness. These observations spark reflection and tension within Sora, creating an internal struggle between loyalty, precision, and emerging conscience. Philosophical and moral elements intensify alongside physical training, setting the stage for a confrontation that tests skill, judgment, and ethics. Kaido integrates advanced techniques with philosophical awareness, combining observation, timing, and moral reasoning. Daniel challenges him with unpredictable scenarios requiring adaptability without sacrificing control or clarity. Each success reinforces the principle that mastery is ongoing, built through reflection, practice, and ethical application. Kaido's confidence grows, grounded in understanding rather than ego, preparing him for the tests that lie ahead. The city serves as a dynamic classroom for Kaido's development. Streets, markets, and neighborhoods offer constant challenges where observation, anticipation, and moral judgment are tested. Each interaction strengthens his awareness, judgment, and self-control. Daniel observes, guiding and providing context while allowing Kaido to learn through experience. These lessons solidify Kaido's evolution as both fighter and philosopher. Evening reflections in the dojo deepen Kaido's insight. Kata and repetition become meditations on intention, consequence, and clarity. Daniel shares stories from his past, illustrating the integration of skill, philosophy, and character. Kaido begins to see mastery as a harmony of body, mind, and ethics rather than mere technical ability. The anticipation of confrontation with Sora and Ryuga looms, sharpening both skill and philosophy. Sora, despite flawless technique, experiences growing doubt under Ryuga's philosophy of obedience and dominance. Observing Kaido, he recognizes the power of awareness, restraint, and moral integration. This contrast heightens internal tension, hinting at philosophical and ethical challenges ahead. The narrative emphasizes that battles are not only physical but deeply moral and intellectual. Kaido's advanced training continues, emphasizing the seamless blending of technique, awareness, and ethical reasoning. Daniel guides him to see movement as an extension of thought and conscience, reinforcing that true mastery integrates body, mind, and spirit. Kaido's resilience grows as he prepares to face challenges where skill alone will not suffice. The city's everyday conflicts act as tests for Kaido's integration of philosophy into life. Minor disputes and tense situations provide lessons in perception, judgment, and moral action. Each experience strengthens his ethical framework and situational awareness, demonstrating that martial arts shape character as much as physical ability. Ryuga's looming presence contrasts sharply with Kaido's approach. Sora observes, recognizing that control and dominance cannot match the depth of awareness, empathy, and adaptability that Kaido embodies. This philosophical tension builds anticipation for the eventual confrontation, highlighting the stakes of both ideology and technique. Kaido's evening training sessions evolve into meditation on movement, reflection, and moral clarity. Each strike and block embodies ethical reasoning and awareness. Daniel emphasizes that mastery is continuous, requiring observation, adaptation, and the integration of skill and conscience. Kaido's development reaches a new plateau, preparing him for tests that are as intellectual and moral as they are physical. The rhythm of life in the dojo mirrors the city's unpredictability. Kaido navigates subtle challenges with skill, awareness, and ethical judgment, integrating lessons into daily interactions. Daniel observes and adjusts guidance, cultivating growth through experience. This integration strengthens Kaido's identity as both a martial artist and a young man of principle, capable of responding thoughtfully to both challenge and opportunity. Confrontations outside the dojo reveal Kaido's growing command of philosophy and skill. Minor disputes escalate only to be resolved through observation, timing, and ethical action. These victories reinforce Daniel's teachings, highlighting the inseparability of technique, awareness, and moral judgment. Kaido emerges as a fighter whose presence alone commands respect, not through intimidation, but through clarity, wisdom, and composure. The philosophical divergence between Kaido and Sora intensifies. Kaido embodies awareness, adaptability, and ethical integration, while Sora represents disciplined precision shaped by obedience and dominance. This ideological divide foreshadows a confrontation where both skill and philosophy will be tested, emphasizing the story's deeper themes of moral and intellectual integrity alongside physical ability. Music and sound design amplify narrative impact. Dominic Lewis's score combines traditional Chinese instrumentation with orchestral motifs, reflecting Lee's cultural duality and internal journey. Ambient sounds, footsteps, swish of clothing, exhalations, enhance realism during training, while dynamic percussion heightens tension during tournament sequences. Auditory cues complement visual storytelling, reinforcing both technical precision and emotional resonance. Supporting characters continue to provide narrative and emotional depth. Lee's mother offers moral grounding and emotional support, emphasizing the sacrifices and values that underpin his journey. Friends and classmates provide social context, peer interaction, and relational challenges, reinforcing that personal mastery is inseparable from community, empathy, and social awareness. Even minor interactions are deliberately constructed to underscore themes of resilience, ethical growth, and relational balance. Production and cinematography choices are closely aligned with narrative and philosophical objectives. Actors underwent rigorous martial arts training, emotional preparation, and philosophical study to ensure that physical movement was fully integrated with character development. Lighting, framing, and camera movement accentuate focus, psychological states, and environmental context, supporting the thematic arc of reflection, adaptation, and mastery. Wardrobe evolves with character growth, combining traditional kung fu and karate elements to visually reflect Lee's integration of multiple styles and philosophies. Mentorship remains central to the narrative's thematic coherence. Mr. Han embodies reflective wisdom, patience, and ethical guidance, while Daniel emphasizes strategic thinking, discipline, and moral judgment. Their complementary teachings illustrate that learning is relational, multidimensional, and cumulative. Lee's ability to synthesize these lessons demonstrates the film's core message: true mastery arises from the integration of mind, body, and spirit, informed by experience, observation, and ethical reflection. The approach to the final confrontation is carefully foreshadowed throughout the preceding sequences. Visual cues, steady gaze, balanced posture, controlled breathing, signal Lee's readiness, while parallel sequences depicting the rival's introspection create narrative tension. The filmmakers ensure that the climactic match is experienced as both a martial arts contest and a culmination of personal growth, philosophical reflection, and ethical development. As the narrative moves into the final weeks before the tournament, Li Fang's journey enters its most intense phase of mental, physical, and emotional preparation. One of the most powerful sequences occurs during a pre-dawn session atop an abandoned skyscraper. Wide, sweeping aerial shots capture Li moving through complex sequences that require balance, coordination, and adaptive thinking. The soft, cool light of early morning casts long, angular shadows, emphasizing both his solitude and the meditative quality of his practice. Every movement, twists of the torso, subtle weight shifts, precise hand positioning, is highlighted with intimate close-ups, allowing the audience to witness not just the technical execution but the focus, determination, and internalization of philosophical lessons. The soundtrack amplifies the mood, a blend of gentle wind sounds, distant city noises, and the rhythmic swish of fabric mirrors Li's evolving concentration and growing mastery. During this sequence, mentorship remains central. Mr. Han continues to guide Li with philosophical instruction. Strength without patience is a storm, patience without strength is a shadow. Combine them, and you move like the river. Daniel LaRusso reinforces practical application and strategic awareness, emphasizing timing, observation, and ethical restraint. These dual perspectives converge in Li's practice. Movements are not simply physical, they are thoughtful, deliberate, and informed by a philosophy that values discipline, adaptability, and moral clarity. Dialogue is sparse but meaningful, often conveyed through pauses, reflective glances, or quiet instruction, reinforcing the idea that growth is experiential as much as it is verbal. In parallel, the rival's arc reaches a critical turning point. Scenes depict him training alone in a dimly lit dojo, confronting self-doubt and familial expectations. Cinematography highlights the tension between his outward confidence and internal uncertainty. Reflections in polished wooden floors, shadows cast by sparse lighting, and micro-expressions of hesitation communicate his psychological state without overt exposition. These glimpses humanize the antagonist, creating depth and empathy, and ensuring that the climactic confrontation is not merely a battle of skill but a collision of personal journeys and ethical development. The film places significant emphasis on environmental storytelling. Rooftops, staircases, urban alleyways, and riverside platforms become arenas for both physical training and philosophical reflection. These spaces serve as metaphors for Li's internal journey, illustrating balance, risk, and adaptability. Slow-motion sequences highlight subtle adjustments, shifts in weight, pivoting feet, focused gaze, allowing the audience to perceive the meticulous integration of mental discipline with physical execution. Wardrobe evolves alongside character development, blending traditional kung fu attire with karate elements, visually signaling the synthesis of styles and philosophies central to the film's thematic core. Training montages preceding the tournament integrate all prior lessons. Li practices complex sequences that combine fluid forms from Mr. Han with tactical sparring exercises from Daniel. Environmental adaptation remains key. Movements interact with stairs, railings, and walls to demonstrate flexibility and creativity. Each sequence is carefully choreographed to highlight the interplay between physical skill, cognitive strategy, and ethical awareness. Slow motion captures critical decisions in real time, illustrating how Li's philosophical training informs his tactical responses and reinforcing the narrative's central message: mastery is holistic. Dialogue and relational dynamics deepen thematic resonance. Mentorship scenes alternate between practical instruction, philosophical reflection, and subtle humor, reinforcing the multifaceted nature of learning. Mr. Han emphasizes patience, flexibility, and self-awareness, while Daniel highlights tactical thinking, ethical judgment, and situational application. Li's integration of both mentors' lessons demonstrates the film's philosophical assertion: mastery is the product of experience, reflection, and thoughtful synthesis, rather than mere repetition or force. The climactic tournament is meticulously structured. Early rounds emphasize technique, middle rounds test adaptability and psychological endurance, and the final confrontation synthesizes all prior lessons: fluid motion, precise timing, strategic insight, and ethical consideration. Cinematography alternates between wide shots to display full-body technique and close-ups that reveal concentration, micro-expressions, and internal focus. Editing emphasizes rhythm, tension, and pacing, blending rapid action with deliberate pauses. Slow motion punctuates critical maneuvers, illustrating the intricate interplay between training, philosophy, and decision-making. Fight choreography communicates narrative as effectively as dialogue. Every strike, block, and pivot is deliberate, reflecting both technical mastery and emotional evolution. Environmental elements, stairs, railings, walls, are integrated to demonstrate adaptability and creative problem-solving. Jackie Chan's influence is evident, each movement tells a story, revealing character, growth, and psychological state. The audience witnesses not merely combat but the embodiment of lessons learned, choices made, and philosophies internalized. Sound design and music amplify narrative and emotional stakes. Dominic Lewis's score blends traditional Chinese instrumentation with orchestral motifs, reflecting Li's cultural duality and internal journey. Ambient sounds, footsteps, breath, swish of garments, enhance realism during training, while dynamic percussion and layered orchestration heighten tension during tournament sequences. Auditory cues are synchronized with movement and emotion, reinforcing both technical execution and philosophical significance. Supporting characters continue to enrich the narrative. Li's mother remains an anchor of moral and emotional stability, offering guidance, encouragement, and perspective. Friends, classmates, and minor figures create relational texture, highlighting social dynamics, peer influence, and communal engagement. These interactions reinforce that personal mastery is inseparable from relational awareness, empathy, and social responsibility. Production design, cinematography, and editing work in concert to highlight narrative and philosophical intent. Camera angles emphasize motion, internal focus, and environmental interaction, while lighting and set design underscore thematic motifs of balance, reflection, and growth. Wardrobe evolution visually communicates character development and philosophical integration. Actors underwent extensive martial arts training, emotional rehearsal, and philosophical study to ensure authenticity and depth, guided by Jackie Chan's mentorship. Mentorship remains the narrative's core. Mr. Han embodies wisdom, patience, and moral guidance, while Daniel LaRusso emphasizes strategy, ethical judgment, and disciplined application. Their combined influence demonstrates that learning is relational, cumulative, and multidimensional. Li's ability to synthesize these teachings exemplifies the film's central thesis: mastery encompasses body, mind, and spirit, informed by reflection, experience, and ethical consideration. Kaido awakens to the faint light of dawn, the dojo bathed in a soft glow that highlights the worn wood and echoes of past practice. Each breath he takes is deliberate, each motion infused with intention. Daniel watches silently, allowing Kaido to discover subtle nuances in balance, stance, and movement. The repetition of kata becomes a meditation, a bridge between body, mind, and spirit. Kaido begins to sense the rhythm of the dojo as an extension of himself, every creak of wood, every whisper of wind a guide for awareness, timing, and understanding. In these quiet moments, he feels a growing connection to his father's teachings and the philosophy of Miyagi-Do. Outside the dojo, the city challenges Kaido's integration of skill and awareness. Minor disputes, tense social interactions, and fleeting threats force him to apply restraint, observation, and judgment. In one instance, a street confrontation escalates among rival youth. Kaido intervenes, using positioning and calm words to prevent harm. The resolution underscores Daniel's lessons: mastery is measured by self-control, ethical judgment, and the ability to influence outcomes without aggression. Each encounter strengthens Kaido's confidence, grounding him in a philosophy that intertwines skill, conscience, and strategic thought. Daniel reflects on his own journey with Mr. Miyagi, recalling the repetitive tasks and subtle lessons that formed the foundation of his understanding. Watching Kaido, he recognizes similar growth, small frustrations, fleeting victories, and the gradual accumulation of insight through experience. Daniel balances guidance with freedom, correcting only when necessary and allowing Kaito to internalize the lessons of patience, awareness, and resilience. The bond between mentor and student deepens, a mixture of respect, trust, and shared purpose that solidifies Kaito's identity as a martial artist and a young man of principle. Ryuga Tanaka's influence extends across the martial arts world, creating a web of control through tournaments, academies, and underground arenas. Sora Kensher, Ryuga's protege, executes commands flawlessly, yet subtle doubts begin to emerge, questions, fleeting curiosity, and hints of conscience intrude on the rigid discipline he has been trained to follow. Observing Kaito, Sora senses a different philosophy, awareness integrated with skill, moral clarity, and adaptability. The contrast foreshadows the philosophical and physical confrontations that will define the story's climax, emphasizing that mastery is measured in both character and technique. Kaito's dojo training reaches new levels of complexity. Daniel introduces exercises that require him to anticipate movement, integrate timing, and respond with ethical judgment. Frustration is frequent, as mastery is gradual and challenging, yet each breakthrough reinforces the principle that true power is controlled, deliberate, and morally grounded. The dojo becomes a crucible where physical skill, mental acuity, and ethical insight are honed together, preparing Kaito for trials that will test the full spectrum of his abilities. Outside the controlled environment of the dojo, Kaito faces unpredictable challenges. Minor disputes and tense situations become practical tests of awareness, patience, and moral reasoning. Each successful intervention reinforces Daniel's teaching: strength is effective only when integrated with empathy, observation, and judgment. Through these real-world applications, Kaito's confidence grows, solidifying the principles of Miyagi-Do in both skill and character. Ryuga and Sora orchestrate indirect tests, observing Kaito's growth and capabilities. Sora notices the subtle strengths Kaito embodies: patience, empathy, and moral integration, qualities absent in his own training. This observation sparks internal reflection, tension, and philosophical questioning, setting the stage for an inevitable confrontation that will test skill, character, and conscience simultaneously. Kaito integrates advanced techniques with moral awareness, blending observation, timing, and strategy. Daniel challenges him with unpredictable scenarios that require adaptation without loss of control. Each success reinforces the principle that mastery is continuous, built upon reflection, ethical understanding, and skillful execution. Kaito's confidence strengthens, grounded in comprehension rather than ego or impulse, preparing him for more complex challenges. The city serves as a constant classroom. Streets, markets, and neighborhoods offer opportunities to observe, anticipate, and act with moral clarity. Each interaction hones judgment, patience, and awareness. Daniel guides subtly, allowing Kaito to learn through experience while providing context when necessary. Through this, Kaito's empathy and leadership. Evening sessions in the dojo become reflections on philosophy as well as movement. Kata and repetition evolve into meditation on intention, consequence, and clarity. Daniel shares stories of his past, demonstrating the integration of skill, ethics, and judgment. Kaito begins to perceive mastery as the convergence of physical ability, philosophical awareness, and ethical action, a harmony that will guide him through future confrontations. Sora, observing Kaito from afar, experiences growing doubt. Although technically perfect, he recognizes the limits of a philosophy focused solely on obedience and dominance. Kaito's embodiment of awareness, restraint, and ethical integration creates internal tension, signaling a confrontation that is as much moral and philosophical as it is physical. Kaito continues to refine advanced techniques, emphasizing seamless integration of skill, awareness, and judgment. Daniel highlights the inseparability of physical mastery and ethical reasoning, teaching that true strength arises from conscious, informed action. Kaito's resilience grows, preparing him for trials that will demand both mental acuity and ethical decision-making. The city's unpredictable nature remains a teacher. Kaido encounters situations that test observation, adaptability, and moral judgment. Each success strengthens his comprehension of Miyagi-Do principles, demonstrating the inseparability of martial skill, ethics, and social awareness. Daniel observes, offering guidance and context, allowing Kaido to transform experience into wisdom. Ryuga's looming presence casts a philosophical shadow, contrasting Kaido's approach of awareness and ethical integration with Sora's obedience and precision. This tension heightens the stakes of the impending confrontation, emphasizing that mastery is defined not only by technique but by character, judgment, and moral fortitude. Kaido's evening practice deepens the understanding of integration, movement, philosophy, and moral clarity merging seamlessly. Each strike, block, and stance embodies awareness, ethical judgment, and intentionality. Daniel reinforces the concept of mastery as ongoing, requiring reflection, adaptation, and conscious action. Kaido's development reaches a critical threshold, preparing him for challenges that will test every aspect of his growth. Daily life continues to provide subtle lessons. Kaido navigates interpersonal conflicts, crowded spaces, and unexpected confrontations, applying awareness and ethical judgment. These exercises embed discipline and moral clarity into his character, transforming experience into internalized philosophy. Confrontations outside the dojo reveal Kaido's increasing command of integration between skill and philosophy. Minor conflicts are resolved thoughtfully, demonstrating that true mastery lies in moral clarity, awareness, and judicious action. Kaido emerges as a figure of respect, not through intimidation, but through presence, composure, and thoughtful application of skill. The philosophical divide between Kaido and Sora intensifies. Kaido represents adaptability, awareness, and ethical integration. Sora embodies disciplined precision and rigid obedience. This ideological tension sets the stage for a confrontation that tests not only technique but conscience, decision-making, and character. Kaido continues to integrate advanced physical training with meditation on philosophy. Daniel emphasizes the inseparability of skill, awareness, and ethics. Kaido internalizes this, recognizing that mastery is as much about moral judgment and conscious action as it is about strikes, blocks, or balance. Sora observes Kaido's growth and feels the first stirrings of doubt. While technically flawless, he sees the limitations of a philosophy focused solely on dominance. Kaido's approach, integrating awareness, empathy, and moral clarity, challenges Sora's worldview, setting up internal and external conflicts. The city becomes both arena and teacher, with Kaido applying lessons to interactions that require judgment, restraint, and strategic thinking. Each encounter strengthens understanding, embedding the principles of Miyagi-Do into daily life. Daniel continues to guide, balancing observation with gentle correction, allowing Kaido to develop insight through experience.